Blog Talk Radio. Hi, and welcome to The Art of Film Funding. I'm your co-host, Claire Papin, along with Carole Dean, author of the best-selling book, The Art of Film Funding. Carole is also the founder and president of From the Heart Productions and the host of this show. Don Schwartz is an actor and journalist. His book, Telling Their Own Stories, Conversations with Documentary Filmmakers, is available from Amazon. His film reviews are posted almost daily, and his filmmaker profiles appear regularly on FromTheHeartProductions.com. Don holds B.A., M.A., Ph.D. degrees in psychology and counseling. We have a special guest today, and that is Alexis Krasilovsky, who has produced and directed both Women Behind the Camera, a 2-disc set, and Let Them Eat Cake.
So one of the reasons Don and I do Dissecting Docs is because this show is dedicated to our most precious and beloved filmmakers, the documentary and independent filmmaker. And we're here to honor these brilliant creatives who give their time, energy, and sometimes their freedom to bring us the truth. We think they are our last vestige of sincere, unbiased reporters who give up their time, their creativity, and they put their hearts into their films. Now, Don, I want you to give us your review of Alexis's brilliant film, Let Them Eat Cake.
Absolutely. Yes, this is, we're reviewing 2 films of Alexis. Okay?
Yes.
They're very different from each other, but that's the talent of a documentary filmmaker. Alexis Krasilovsky. The title of the film, of course, is Let Them Eat Cake. I've also seen the film under the title Pastryology, and I want to talk to Alexis about that when we have our interview. Let Them Eat Cake is one of the most unusual documentary films I've seen. She is in 2 worlds in her film, the world of poverty, if not extreme poverty, specifically the growing creating of ingredients for pastries, primarily sugar, and also cocoa. And she contrasts that growing and providing of ingredients with the production and consumption of pastries. So in the film, we go back and forth between impoverished areas and metropolitan cities and the baking of absolutely delicious, taunting pastries. And the experience of being in the impoverished areas is as heartbreaking as the making and consuming of the pastries is absolutely seductive. And that contrast, the viewer has to live with that contrast. It puts you in a very unusual place. And Alexis gives equal attention to these 2 worlds. So she's not denigrating the pastries, because you can find recipes on the film's website of the pastries she shows. And also, for instance, the making of baklava in Turkey, which I believe is where that happens, but Alexis will let us know. That segment of how this one man makes gourmet baklava, that was so well done. And I grabbed my buddies. I said, "You got to see this baklava." And of course, I did not show them what happens in Africa with children in practically slave labor, harvesting cocoa, and it's very dangerous, and they shouldn't be doing this in the first place. And that would be, I would say, the most heart-wrenching image I saw is these children harvesting cocoa in absolutely abject poverty. There's one of the I don't know if they're not an interviewee, but one of the people that speaks in the film is Shodo Harada Roshi, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he is a Zen priest and abbot, and Alexis has him speaking at points throughout the film, and he is the voice of sanity, and he is the voice of compassion, and he is the voice whose words you want to be the way the world works. And I was amazed and fascinated by this film, and I will be seeing it more times. And it is, again, one of the most unusual films, and I can't wait to talk to Alexis because I have some questions about it.
Okay, good. Well, next you're going to review Shooting Women.
Yes. So Shooting Women, I've learned, is the television version of a film Alexis calls Women Behind the Camera. And recently, Alexis released a 2-CD box set of that film, Women Behind the Camera, and that's what I saw. Alexis is telling the history of women coming into the world of filmmaking as camera people and directors of cinematography. And it is a harrowing experience for women. And she talks about the barriers they had to face, and these barriers include unions and trade organizations, and of course individuals, decision makers, male decision makers. And she interviews camera women around the world. And this is not an American issue. This is a global issue. This is a human issue. And after seeing the film, I felt like I saw something more than women struggling to get into a male-dominated field. I felt like I was introduced to the world of the oppression and subjugation of women in society. In other words, I feel like what Alexis has done, she's created a film whose message transcends its subject. And at the same time, the stories that these women go through to become camera women is incredible. And one of the, I have to confess, there is one particular story that stuck, and that is a woman talking about working on set with the making of Pumping Iron with Arnold Schwarzenegger, his first American film. And he was constantly groping her and harassing her in various ways, and there was no out for her. She would either get herself in trouble if she complained, or she'd have to just suffer it, and she suffered it. And the way she presented herself, it was heartbreaking to see what she had to go through, and if that happened today, whoever was doing that to her would be in jail.
It's quite true, quite true. Wasn't that a fantastic film, Don?
Absolutely. And I just want to say, if you want to see this film, do what you can to see the 2-CD set. Excuse me, DVD set, because the information's too important to not see.
No, and the edit is very well done. It's such an important film because it's historical. Things have changed, yes, but I don't know how much they have changed. I don't think that the percentage is still anywhere near where it should be with women cameramen. And that's what we were all trained. There was only one word. It was called cameraman. And that was because it was a father-to-son ruled union. And so I know that Brienne, her first story about going into the union to try to get into the cameraman's union, and the guy saying, "Over my dead body, that's when you'll get in." And she said, okay. And she waited until he died. And then she marched right back into the new president, gave him the pitch, gave him her resume and her offer for a job, because always this catch-22, you see. You had to have the talent, but you couldn't get the experience, rather. You had to have the experience, but you couldn't get the experience because you couldn't get a job unless you were in the union. So that's how they really kept people out. Well, she had the experience. She had an offer for a job, And she had everything that he needed. And the new president said, well, we'll think about it. So he was a bit nicer. And he put her resume in his drawer, and that was it. Of course, he was going to just stonewall her, but eventually got a call from the network looking for a woman shooter for our breast cancer a series that was being done. And they said, do you have a woman camera person? And he said, of course we do. And that's how the first woman got on television to do camera work, which was a brilliant move. She broke a lot of barriers for us, Brianne Murphy.
Yes, I want to also mention, Carole, that the film is available in French, German, or Spanish subtitles. Your choice.
Great.
And also, there's a book called Shooting Woman, Behind the Camera Around the World, which Alexis co-wrote.
Well, give us the website so people could find it.
The website is, the one website I found is pastriology.com. That's PASTRIOLOGY, pastriology.com. And any other websites, of course, Alexis will also give us.
Okay, good. Well, why don't you introduce Alexis, and let's get on with your questions for her.
Okay. Well, Alexis Krasilovsky is a cinematographer and a filmmaker, and she's quite accomplished. She has a long, fruitful career, and she's obviously made the two films we just talked about. And I am very excited to have a chance to ask her some questions.
Well, John and Carole, I'm really very thrilled and honored to be in the company of such films as Connected and Cowspiracy. Your reviews were so interesting for those films. I'm going to rush right out and try to get a chance to see them. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have today about Let Them Eat Cake and Women Behind the Camera. So thanks for having me on your show.
Okay, well, yes, we're honored. Carole, you want to ask your questions?
Yes. Alexis, how did you choose the cinematographers to be interviewed in your film?
Well, I think I was very inspired by Brianne Murphy. She was like the patron saint of all of us camera women who were in a group called Behind the Lens, an Association of Professional Camera Women. And this was a group of women who had persevered against enormous odds in an extremely male-dominated industry where even today the numbers of camera women shooting the top 250 top-grossing films is only between 2 and 5%. It's even worse than the women directors who are now getting the ACLU behind them to fight that kind of discrimination. So Brianne Murphy was such a positive role model. She had a sense of humor. She had a great sense of organizing. And she and Estelle Kirsch, Kristen Glover, and a few other camera women got together, first just to support each other and to try to get jobs on the Olympics that were coming to Los Angeles. And they had such amazing stories that I thought, wow, these stories have got to be told. And so I chose camera women whom I first met through Behind the Lens, this Association of Professional Camera Women, and interviewed them. And then through the grapevine, because things started to expand, we even got members of the group from as far away as Sweden, that I'd hear about a camera woman in New Zealand, through the editor of my first book, Women Behind the Camera, Harriet Margolis, who actually is the co-author of the book that we just finished, that just came out last week, called Shooting Women Behind the Camera Around the World, along with our co-author Julia Stein in L.A. And Harriet Margolis was living in New Zealand, and she knew Myri Gunn. Myri Gunn happened to go to an international Women in Film Summit that was being held in the Los Angeles area one year, and there was Michelle Crenshaw, who's a fantastic Hollywood camera operator. So I said, well, Michelle, can you interview Myri? And Myri, can you interview Michelle? And one thing led to another. So a lot of it was through the grapevine.
Well, you did a fabulous job. You really picked some engaging, brilliant women who had a lot to contribute to this historical documentary. But I would think that choosing the cinematographers to shoot cinematographers was another hard decision.
It was a very hard choice in many cases, because when you say that, brilliant cinematographers, I feel guilty. There are some very talented camera women, such as Linda Brown, who heads the cinematography program at USC now, Jessica Lopez, who is a really incredibly successful up-and-coming younger camera woman who's part of the group Camera Women Los Angeles. They've got this great Facebook page, and they've got hundreds of members already. And so some of the camera women who were not included, sometimes it was because we had to do, once we decided we're doing a global project, we had to strike a certain balance. And so even though camera women flock to Hollywood from all over the world, we had to be selective in order to make sure that we were including camera women in Asia, in South America, in Africa. And that meant that the numbers of camera women who are working in Los Angeles and very serious and very talented, very hardworking, had to be limited to strike a balance globally.
Absolutely. Well, you did great. And I believe that you had help from international producers to keep your budget down. So how did you find international producers?
Well, I was really lucky because I'm a professor teaching film also, and I had a chapter about writing documentary films in a book by Michael Tobias called The Art of Documentary. And they had, and he had his publisher gave a really nice party in Los Angeles when his book came out, and there I met a young filmmaker named Vanessa Smith. And Vanessa Smith had written a chapter on filming in Tibet. She's American, but had lived in India and was very active, working in other parts of the world. That was just at the point where I was, getting going with this project, and it was really without Vanessa, I don't think we would have become such an international, global type of a documentary project. So Vanessa Smith became our executive producer, our associate producer, our unit producer, our unit director, our interviewer of camera women in the UK and elsewhere, and she did a fabulous job. And I'm internally grateful to Vanessa for having produced the film with me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, she's in my intentional filmmaking class, and I think often, who's teaching who here? She is such a brilliant talent. What a gift that was to be connected with her. And I have to thank you personally for creating this film, because this will be on the shelf for 20 or 30 years, long after you and I are both gone. People will be looking at this saying, can you believe what they went through? Don't you think?
I think so. I mean, the film is a lot bigger than me or you in some ways, Carole. I mean, we got footage of the first Chinese camerawomen who had actually traveled around the People's Republic of China in 1949 with Mao Zedong, and that's amazing footage. And there are many historical aspects to the film. Marina Goldovskaya, who is the former Soviet Union's most important documentary filmmaker, she was filming some of the key historical events of Russia, crying behind the camera while people were trying to attack her. So, I mean, we do have some historical value in this film, and it really surprised me that just 2 weeks ago, I'm still getting over jet lag. I mean, the film was showing at a cinematographer's festival in the Czech Republic. So the film doesn't seem to be dying out anytime soon.
No, it's too good for that. It'll be around a long time. It is a great, important asset for all of us.
Well,
so, Don, I'll leave it up to you now to ask your questions.
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to make a comment. I think we cannot understate the historical value of this film because documentary films cover areas and subjects and people that wouldn't be covered otherwise. And in addition to that, many of them are a history that we would not have without the filmmaker having done it. And this is a prime example of that kind of a film. Alexis, so I want to ask about Let Them Eat Cake, but we're talking about women behind the camera. I want to stay with that. So I'm wondering, what kind of responses have you had from individuals or institutions or organizations to the film coming out and being successful?
To women behind the camera? Well, first of all, I was really gratified that the International Cinematographers Guild, the union, and we kind of attacked in the film in some ways for being fairly sexist and discriminatory towards its female members. Thomas McKenney of the ICG actually said that it was the most worldwide film since Winged Migration. So I guess it was the film came out in 2007, and there really were not that many. Global was not a filmmaker's middle names at that point. So we were glad that people were recognizing the scope of the film. And I was also really happy. By the way, that's my cat meowing in the background. I hope you have a sense of humor. We also found that professors found the film useful in mass communication courses and women's studies courses, and journalism courses. It wasn't limited to film production, but it certainly is a film that we intended to make to empower younger women who might want to follow their passion of being behind the camera as camera women.
And so what is next in your career project-wise? I know that Carole is interested in that too. What's next?
What am I going to do next?
Yes.
Well, I think that at the moment I have my hands a little full with the book launch for the book that's come out of going a little further with women behind the camera, because when we made that film, we started to hear about camera women in Indonesia, South Africa, many other countries, and that's where Harriet Margolis and me and Julia Stein kind of, put together this book that goes a little further into the issues, and we're really trying to be part of that battle, fighting for gender equity behind the camera. But at the same time, the fact that it's a global book, interviewing over 90 camera women all over the world, the fact that it's global is something that has become kind of my even more of a passion rather than less so. And so now I'm under contract to write a book about screenplay adaptation, and that book is also going to be global in scope and hopefully alerting people to some of the really fantastic issues and screenwriting of women and minorities as well.
Screenplay adaptations of
like screenplay and teleplay adaptation.
Of any material or a specific?
When someone decides, wow, I read this really fantastic graphic novel, it would make a great movie, then that's an adaptation. Or if someone sees an amazing play in New York or L.A. or Paris or Japan or Hong Kong, anywhere, then that can be an adaptation if a movie's made out of it. And similarly, if there's a great movie that then becomes a Broadway play or becomes a TV series or a webisode, whatever. I mean, adaptations can go in many different directions. So that's going to be the next project.
Yes, and I see many documentaries. If I was a mogul, I would green light them for narratives. So there's another source of writing. Can we move to Let Them Eat Cake?
Okay, sure.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you wanted to say about women behind the camera? I don't want to cut that short. Well,
I mean, I there are many things that we can say about women behind the camera. I think that in the 1960s, there was a time when an art director in Paris threatened to throw me out of a open a window of a skyscraper in Paris if I didn't give him sex. I mean, that was my entree into trying to get work in the film industry. Many of those problems of sexual harassment, sex discrimination have not gone away. It's just that women are up in arms and really vocal and battling them. There are at least a dozen Facebook groups vociferously putting out word, and the EEOC is in town now interviewing the women directors who have been discriminated against and who have given their statements to the ACLU. So people are doing things about this now, and I was hoping that Women Behind the Camera would be, and I think it has been, part and parcel of that call to arms and something that would be an eye-opener and give people the awareness and courage they would need to go into the field and fight the battles.
I totally agree. The film is very inspiring to action.
Well, thank you.
Oh, certainly. Let them eat cake. I'll ask what for me is the most obvious question: what drew you to the subject, and what drew you to the approach of alternating scenes?
I think it was implicit from the very start. We started making this film during the food crisis of 2008 in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And that was a time when the price of the country's basic staple, which was rice, was so inflated that even middle-class people were having a really hard time just being able to eat 3 meals a day. And the quality of rice that the poor were eating was something that ordinarily would have been fed only to cattle. And that was at the same time the U.S. had just been overtaken by a cupcake craze. I was at the Dhaka International Film Festival celebrating the Women Behind the Camera, which had shown in around a dozen festivals all around the world. And in Dhaka, I met a wonderful young filmmaker from Calcutta, India, Sanjay Ghosh, and we sat there saying, wow, these embassy parties are really great, the food's really lavish, but 10,000 people just lost their homes in Bangladesh, and isn't there something we can do about it? And at the same time, something jumped and clicked in my mind where I thought that I had talked to filmmakers in other festivals in other parts of the world, and we kept saying, wow, I like your film, I like your film, and back and forth, we should work together. So Sanjay and I decided, well, let's make a film about pastry that compares the extremes of the incredible, lavish delicacies that the wealthy can eat to the people who, in some cases, don't have anything to eat or are struggling to have enough food for their children by working on sugar plantations in India, something which Sanjay, as co-producer, then hired Ajit Nag, a wonderful filmmaker from the southern part of India, to film in Telangana, where the suicide rate of farmers has been astronomical. So to have these extremes balanced, I went to Okayama, Japan, and interviewed an abbot, Shodo Harada Roshi, whom I believe you mentioned earlier in the program. Thank you. And this is a Zen Buddhist abbot who lives in Sogenji Monastery in Okayama. And he said that if you don't have balance between those who have too much to eat and those who don't have enough to eat, you will not be able to achieve world peace. So that, to me, became the fulcrum and the central message of the film.
World peace is the underlying central message.
Yes, and it's a very powerful film. I have to ask you about this footage from Africa of children harvesting cocoa, or do you pronounce it cacao?
Cacao if you're French, or cocoa it's probably fine if you're American. The way this footage came into being is that I have a third co-producer in addition to Sanjay Ghosh from India. I worked with Dr. Hamidou Souma, who is a colleague of mine at California State University, Northridge. We're both in the Department of Cinema and Television there, and he teaches media studies. And Hamidou Souma is originally from West Africa and has spent many years in France as well. And he knew one of his friends was Moussa Diakité, who is one of the foremost award-winning documentary filmmakers of West Africa. And I thought it would be much better if, instead of me as a first-world woman living in Los Angeles, to pop over to West Africa and suddenly call the shots and assume all the poor, starving children of West Africa, coming in with my own cultural and sociological biases. I thought it would be much better for Moussa Diakité to travel to the rural part of Guinea, which he did. And Nzere, if I pronounce it correctly, is one of the sections of Africa that has been hardest hit by the Ebola crisis. So every time I see the film, I kind of have tears coming to my eyes, worrying and wondering what's happened to the children who are in that section of the film. But lo and behold, it turned out that those children, even though you said in your review, they look so impoverished, in fact they are very the journalist from West Africa whom we interviewed about their situation economically and sociologically, he said that these are family-owned plantations. The children fight for the privilege of being able to pick the cocoa pods on their days off from school, and the money they make from selling the cocoa enables them to pay for their school uniforms and their books and makes their education possible. And so it's actually a win-win situation. They're going to inherit that plantation when they're older. And so this was like completely mind-blowing for me because I really came in with a very different set of assumptions. So it was quite a learning process making this film, learning about other cultures, and also, as a director, learning a new way of filmmaking, which is to work transnationally and to listen rather than dictate what the film is going to be about and what the issues are going to be and how to put it together.
As a helicopter parent, I wanted to jump to the screen and rescue their kids, partly from the dangers that they were climbing trees.
It's amazing the danger. Danger is an amazing thing in this film. It turns out that Nzere has been maybe dangerous in terms of poverty, but it also has been extremely dangerous in terms of Ebola. And Sarcelle, also the interview with Isabel Cohen, who is making a special Rosh Hashanah Jewish New Year cake in Paris, France. Her apartment is part of Sarcelle, which was hard hit by rioting in Paris. As we tried to include all 5 major world religions in our film, because, again, the idea of having peace by balancing those who have too much to eat with those who don't have enough to eat, we try to, at the same time, honor the cultural traditions that are behind many kinds of pastries around the world. And Gaziantep, where we filmed the baklava, even though it's a totally peaceful scene, and really that baklava is the most delicious thing I ate during all 6 years of production, and that's a real statement insofar as I gained 25 pounds making a film about pastry. But that baklava, by far was the most delicious thing on the planet. But Gaziantep is where the Syrian refugees have been having all kinds of problems, and there's been a tremendous amount of fighting, and it's an area of real crisis. So we happened to be there at a peaceful time. In fact, it was so peaceful that the taxi cab driver was one of the nicest people I ever met anywhere. And this Turkish taxi cab driver, when I left the big box of baklava that I was trying to bring back to my friends in California in his cab by mistake, he actually drove around and found me and returned it. That was really nice. I learned making this film. You can't have assumptions about people and cultures. People are people, and there are wonderful people all over the world.
Wow. Well, I think I'd like to make a narrative about your life and what you've been through.
Quite right.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing whatever you make next.
Well, thank you very much. I look forward to making more films. I'm in the Writers Guild now, and I'm probably more focused on writing and producing narrative films and documentaries. But on the other hand, after I made Women Behind the Camera, I said, no more documentaries, and then I made Let Them Eat Cake. So, I think it's in my blood. I've been making documentaries for many decades now, and it is one of the things that I love, and I also enjoyed hearing about Cowspiracy and other documentaries and meeting other documentary filmmakers, and I very much thank you for having given me this opportunity to talk to you.
Well, tell us how people can find you, your website, email, whatever you'd like to share.
Well, Let Them Eat Cake, there's actually a website where you can see the film on VOD or DVD, and that's called LetThemEatCakeFilm.com. And for Women Behind the Camera, same thing. You can see it on VOD, or you can order the DVD, and that's WomenBehindTheCamera.com. And either one of those websites, I believe, can link you to my own website, which is alexiskrasilovsky.com. Hard to spell. If you want, I'll spell it. But I think it's probably good enough to see the spelling on one of those two film websites, because I have a lot of other films that I've made as well, as in addition to the books that I've written in the past and the book that has just come out, co-authored with Harry Margolis and Julia Stein, and the book that I'm now writing on adaptation. So you'll be able to see that on my website. So there's a bunch of different websites, and I look forward to, I answer whatever, when people contact me through the websites, I always answer them. So.
How wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your time and knowledge and information, and we all thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Carole.
Okay, lots of love to you. Okay, thank you, Claire. Thank you, Don.
Well, thank you, too.
Okay, bye
You're
for
welcome.
now.
Bye.
All right, be well, everyone.
Bye.
Now, in its second edition, Carole Dean's popular book, The Art of Film Funding, has 12 new chapters to cover all areas of film financing and how to avoid expensive pitfalls. Learn how to start with an idea and end with a trailer, how to make an ask for money, create your story structure and your trailer, legal advice, fair use, successful crowdfunding, how to ask for music rights, and what insurance you can't shoot without. Available on Amazon under Carole Dean and at FromTheHeartProductions.com. I want to remind our listeners that David Raiklin is a brilliant and talented award-winning musician who scores films and can compose music for a trio or for a full orchestra. David is a very good friend to the independent filmmaker and comes highly recommended by From the Heart Productions. If you need music to help tell your story, please contact him at davidraiklin.com. That's David, RAIKLEN.com. And Carole and I want to thank you for tuning in to The Art of Film Funding. Please visit our website at FromTheHeartProductions.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Good luck with your films, everyone.